What's up, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Chicago Football Show. I am Scott Bair. Carmen Vitale is not with us, which means we're going to hear a lot of back and forth between me and my guy, Mike Norman. It's going to be a fun discussion.
What's up, Scott?
Once you get into the summer, right, it's time for lists, it's time for rankings, it's time for pondering great truths, right, because we don't have a lot of news coming towards us. So I think this is going to be a really fun show. Mano a mano, me against you, and we are going to square off a couple times later in the show.
I'm excited for that, and that's why I wore my Brian Urlacher jersey, because I needed a little extra oomph when I bring these points, all right? So that's why we're going to we're going to bring the lumber today, all right? Just like Urlacher did back in the day.
Well, then maybe I should have gone Matt Forte, too, because that's another guy that I was just thinking about, a guy, an underrated running back that can absolutely bring it. Mike and I are definitely going to bring it. And again, this show is going to be less about hard news and more about fun. And the one thing that I know is Caleb Williams is having fun with his offseason right now. We've seen him at hip-hop festivals, Mike. We've seen him chilling with famous artists. And we've also seen him at something called Fanatics Fest, which was new to me as of like a week ago, I guess, hosted by Eli Manning. And Caleb Williams was at the podium. It looks like he was next to Bryce Young, talking about Ben Johnson, his influence kind of on the team and what they're kind of expecting out of that partnership. Mike, let's listen to that sound and then break it all down.
Ben Johnson's great. And it's not just Ben Johnson. We have a young staff / old staff. We have a bunch of experience, a bunch of new energy, provided from the coaches and players and things like that. So, I think it's been awesome. Ben Johnson, he uses some choice words every day towards me, but he's tough, and I love him. He's awesome. It's been great being around him. We hang out in his office, and we just, we have lunch sometimes, things like that. We just, building this bond and relationship to be able to, last a while. And I know Bears fans, it's year after year typically, or every other year where the Bears, coaches and quarterbacks specifically are in and out, and our goal is to be here for a while. So we've been building this bond and relationship, and it's been going well.
Now that must be music to Bears fans' ears, and seeing him up on that panel with Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, Bryce Young, and of course Caleb Williams. We've heard that talk before, but I love how honest he is. That look, and you're from the area, tried and true Bears fan since you were born, and that cycle of coaches and quarterbacks. I like hearing kind of time and again, Caleb wants to break the cycle. That's the messaging coming out of it as he and Ben Johnson kind of get used to each other.
That was, if you heard the woo at the end, that was actually me. At the end, no, just kidding. But, it is exciting when you hear Caleb Williams talking about that, especially with Ben Johnson. It is a cycle, and it has been a cycle for the Bears. And I was just thinking about that before the show and just reiterating the point of Bears quarterbacks really have been muddied, the connection with their coaches, right? This overlapping tendency the Bears have had bringing coaches and quarterbacks, not marrying them together. Caleb's not necessarily married together with Ben Johnson from the rookie season, right? We obviously know that he had one season in the history books. That's always going to be with Matt Eberflus, no matter what happens with him and Ben Johnson. So we know that his story is going to start a year after maybe what people would think is the normal parent quarterback with a coach, right? First-time coach, first-time quarterback. I think it's exciting that they acknowledge it and that Caleb Williams is acknowledging this. I hate it. I hate it when athletes or people in sports kind of downplay it to the point where it's like too much. Just acknowledge it, guys. Like we all watch sports, whether it's football, baseball, basketball, whatever. Professional sports, it's a very common thing that the best player is going to be married with the coach. Right. So I just thought it was awesome to hear him acknowledge it. I think that they know that the pressure is going to be on them. Right. Does acknowledging it now help him throw touchdown passes in December? No. Does that help him against the blitz when it matters? No, of course not. But it's maturity. And I think the maturity that he shows in moments like this, it's just a good thing. You normally don't hear that in this way from Bears quarterbacks. It shows leadership to me, and it shows a recognition of what is going to be expected going forward.
Yeah, and I liked something that he said. I'm not sure if it was in that clip or not, but just the fact that they hang out in Ben Johnson's office, they have lunch sometimes, that they understand what it takes to build a bond. And it's not just in the quarterback meeting room or on the practice field. You have to get to know each other as individuals. And what Ben Johnson always says is that I have to see the field through the eyes of my quarterback, right? And that the only way that you do that is time invested together. And the fact that they're willing to do that, maybe when the lights aren't the brightest, I think all those things are real positives. And again, I love the change the narrative concept, because to your point, so Ben Johnson's only been here for a couple months, right? But he knows that every time he's steps in front of a microphone, he's talking to Bears fans who have experienced all of it, who remember all of it. Just because he wasn't here, we shouldn't, as you pointed out, we shouldn't discount the fact that everyone listening to him has been here, and they've been through the struggles, and they've been through the back and forth, and they've been through the tough and difficult marriages that have ended in a divorce between general managers and head coach and quarterback. And look, this is a statement on a panel in June. Okay. We're not winning any football games here, but I do think that they're definitely kind of along, and they seem to have a good wavelength, which I think is important and could lead to a positive season, which transitions me to Mike Clay's NFL 2025 projection guide. Now, this is a really nerdy document, Mike, that we're probably not going to show on screen, but basically what ESPN did is they made projections for every single team on the planet. And there's a lot of numbers in here, and it's like, will it come true? Will it not come true? The first thing that I kind of wanted to bring up is we're trying to think about this 2025 season is I'm looking at DeAndre Swift numbers, Mike, and we're talking about 251 carries, 1,033 yards, and my eyes deceive me, but I believe it's 8 touchdowns. I think
8 touchdowns, 8 rushing touchdowns. Yep.
Right.
And 1 receiving touchdown here. Yep.
Take or leave that, my guy.
I mean, what's funny is that you went to DeAndre Swift first, too, because that's exactly where my eyes went when our producer Lee handed this to us as well, too, right? It just maybe speaks to the fact that DeAndre Swift might be one of the most important people and players for the Bears this season, right? It is important for DeAndre Swift, or whoever running back one might be, right, to be productive in this offense. So I would take that. I mean, you're talking about 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns from DeAndre Swift. That's right on line generally with about his, career averages. If you're looking at the whole running back room, one thing that stands out to me as well with that is that you have Roschon Johnson, 5 touchdowns, 400 yards, 91 carries,
91 carries.
Touchdown as well.
Yeah.
Right. Like it jumps out that, people are expecting Roschon Johnson to have a little bit bigger of a role in this offense, but also to be utilized potentially around the goal line, right? That's what 5 touchdowns tells me if you're expecting Roschon Johnson to get to that. If you pair those two up, you're talking 13 touchdowns rushing, 2 touchdowns receiving, give or take 1,700 yards. I would take that. I would take that right now. I don't think it's anything that would blow you away, but I would definitely lock that in. Sign me up. Let's see what Caleb and the receivers could do then.
Yeah, and speaking of the wide receivers, going back to last week when Nicholas Moriano was on the show, he boldly kind of said it's possible that the Bears could have 2,000-yard receivers. Now, this Mike Clay projection has DJ Moore at 1,064 and Rome Odunze right behind at 1,012 with a combination of 13 receiving touchdowns from those guys. And how much have we talked about there's a lot of mouths to feed and only one ball when you had Luther Burden and Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland and DeAndre Swift in the passing game. 1,000 yards for each guy. I think it's one of those things where Keenan Allen being there last year maybe kind of dampened Rome Odunze's statistical season. 1,000 yards for 2 guys in one offense, that seems like a lot, but I don't think it's an over-exaggeration necessarily.
No, I don't think it's out of the question. Just looking at it, it's saying 88 receptions and 72 for DJ and Rome, respectively. So you're talking 160 receptions and give or take about 250 targets it's projecting with this. The one thing I want to just point out with this as well, and I think this plays in with DJ and Rome, but obviously Luther Burden, if you look at this too, all these projections are projecting 17 games, right? You're expecting these are in perfect conditions. You're expecting that they're able to play a full season. Is this factoring in the fact that you're going to be playing on the lakefront in December when maybe you're only going to have 150 yards of offense total? I don't necessarily know. I know obviously projections will weigh that in, but specifically with receivers, it's very hard. We know the Bears' history with wide receivers and quarterback play isn't always on the highest level. To project 2 1,000-yard receivers is bold, but I don't think it's out of the question. I think you're right, Scott. I think that it's best case scenario. And for those guys, it says, 1,064 and 1,012 yards respectively. The bigger number for me is 13 touchdowns between DJ Moore and Rome Odunze. If you get 13 touchdowns between those two, you would take that as well, right? I think it really is going to be mostly about who's going to get touchdowns, who's going to produce when it matters. I think the yardage is going to be spread around in Ben Johnson's offense.
Yeah, and that's a great point that all of these projections are for 17 games. We know that's just not a realistic possibility, especially with the weather and with the fact that you're playing in a very physical league. These guys are not going to play 17 games. I do think if we're going to kind of continue down this rabbit hole here, you bring up a really good point about touchdowns and production. Okay, so over 17 games, they're anticipating 17 rushing touchdowns and 25 receiving touchdowns. My math is generally terrible, but I think that's 42. And 42 over 17 games, you're probably pretty happy with that. I would say if you're looking at overall production, even if some of these guys are going to be in and out and some of that yardage is going to be spread around because of injury and because of the fact that they have so many guys, 42 touchdowns.
And that comes down to Caleb too, right?
Yeah.
And that brings us back to, the guy that's going to be controlling the ball. And like you said, 25 receiving touchdowns means 25 pass touchdowns in a perfect world from Caleb in 17 games, right? So this projection says 3,900 yards, 3,916 pass yards for Caleb, 25 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Are you taking that in year 2 from Caleb? Are you happy with that? Throw in 445 rush yards and a touchdown as well from our projection from ESPN.
I would. That's almost double the amount of interceptions that he had from a year ago. But I think that's kind of okay when you look at the willingness and ability to push the ball downfield. And I don't mean that, which is what happens so much, where Caleb kind of runs around and dances for a while and then chucks it deep, right? Those are not productive plays. It can be with his talent level, but those are generally not productive plays. If you got on a rhythm throw where somebody came down and got you based upon a read or a route concept that they had studied, okay, I'm kind of fine with that. And that touchdown to interception ratio is going to be fine with me. I think if you're looking at that, comes just in under 4,000 yards, I think that's okay too, as long as they're able to kind of keep that production high. But of course, I just knocked my table and there was no earthquake in my house, by the way. But as we're looking at this thing, before we kind of move on here, I mean, this is a really nerdy projection, Mike, but we are football nerds, so we're definitely cool with it.
Oh, it's projection season, Scott. I mean,
this
is if you're not getting in projections this time of year, are you really into football right now? I mean, come on. That's the most optimistic part about the offseason, right? Like when you're talking about gambling, whether you're talking about projections, like people love looking at the over-under numbers for guys. So I love this kind of stuff. Like you said, we're nerds. The other one that always is where I go when I look at projections is defense, right? And specifically defensive linemen. And for the Bears, of course, it's going to be Montez Sweat's number. I don't know if you saw this. If you have, you could say you have. But what do you think the number is that the projection is offhand? Montez Sweat sacks for this season.
I have seen it, honestly, and the number is a little bit less than I would have predicted for him in a perfect world. So give us a number. I don't know.
It's 6.2. So 6.2 sacks for Montez Sweat and 5.8 for Dayo Dengbo. So you're talking 12 sacks basically between the two. Are you happy with that?
Not with the cap number that comes with Montez Sweat. I don't have it exactly offhand, but I think he's the most expensive player on the team right now in terms of cap hits. When you think of most expensive players, right, you generally think of big time sack numbers. And by big time sack numbers, I mean like Hendrickson, like TJ Watt, like
talking
Danielle
double digits.
Hunter.
Minimum, right?
Right.
Double digits for all those guys.
Right. So 6.2 seemed a bit precarious for me. And I know that there are more pass rushers. Now that I've looked it up, I might as well just say it. Montez Sweat has a cap number of 25 million. That comes in higher than DJ Moore, higher than Jalen Johnson, and Tremaine Edmonds going on down the line here. 6.2 doesn't exactly rev the engine necessarily because of what you expect from edge rushers that are paid that much. We've seen Montez Sweat produce double-digit sacks before. We've seen him get to 8 and above several times. And last year, if you dive deep into the numbers, which again, card-carrying nerd, I definitely do that, his quarterback pressure percentage last year was better than when he had 8.5 sacks, right? It was better than at times when he had more sacks. He just wasn't getting home enough. I'm hoping that having more established pass rushers allows Montez Sweat to get home more often and turn the quarterback pressure percentage into the sacks, strip sacks, and turnovers, and sometimes just errant throws that can produce turnovers. So that's how I'm looking at it. But again, 6.2, I don't love that. I don't really love the Odangbo number either, coming in at 16 million just in terms of valuation.
I was hoping that Odangbo's number might be higher because of that Sweat factor, like you're talking about, right? We know Matt Eberflus, when after they traded for him, and Ryan Poles loved talking about how Montez was a multiplier. So 5.8 is probably on par with Odangbo's career stats, but like you said, I was kind of hoping that would be higher. The one thing with projections to remember as well too is they tend to lean more conservatively than maybe you would think, right? It's just like gambling numbers. If you're looking at over-unders, generally they're more conservative than you would think. So the other one that jumps out to me about the defensive line as well is just Austin Booker at 3.5 sacks projected. So you're talking about maybe your third pass rusher not getting 4 sacks this season, right? You're talking about maybe every fourth game he's getting a sack. It doesn't seem like enough, right? And I know that's going to be a huge storyline that we're going to follow all season. That defensive line is going to be so important to the Bears, but I personally wouldn't mind knowing these numbers, seeing that maybe there could be an addition added to that defensive line to bolster it if you have the right person that could come in and maybe boost that defensive line.
Yeah, I think so. And that's what you're going to have to evaluate over the course of the summer and going deeper into camp, is that they will continue to learn about this team and evaluate and be like, where do we need help? Where? I also think, to your point, that these projections can be a little bit low sometimes, and sometimes it's involved with fantasy and all this other type of stuff. I think more than anything else, I mean, just looking at that sack total, we're talking about 38.3 sacks. I don't think that's going to cut it. I think that number is too low. I will say that the sack totals from Dennis Allen defenses come from a lot of different spots. I am personally expecting Tremaine Edmonds to thrive in this defense. His sideline to sideline speed, the fact that he can attack. Dennis Allen likes to use those interior linebackers in a number of different ways. So maybe we don't see that one dominant sack number, but I do want to see the overall sack total crank up a little bit.
And it is worth pointing out that the interior of the defensive line's numbers too, while we're just talking about it. Dexter at 3.9 sacks, Grady Jarrett at 3.5 sacks as well too, right? So we know that those big guys in the middle could be important factors in this defense too. So probably shouldn't overlook what their impact could be in that as well. In a perfect world, you're getting pressure up the middle, right in the quarterback's face.
Yeah. And that's what you're looking for in terms of, we talk a lot about the players, right? And what the players could do. There's still so many unknowns because Ben Johnson is still tweaking this offense, and there's so many different weapons that he can exploit and use, and Caleb Williams is still getting into it. So there's a lot of unknown. And I think that can help the Bears because a lot of it, especially early on, is going to be unscouted looks, quote unquote. And that, I think, is going to be really interesting and something that we can kind of get into a little bit here with what we could consider schedule storylines, right? Is that as we kind of move through this schedule, especially the earlier portions of it, it's juicy, right? Especially on the road here. And Ben Johnson said, hey, we're not ready for prime time yet. That was back in OTAs. Plenty of time to get ready. But week 1 versus Minnesota on Monday night against Kevin O'Connell, right? There's no way that the Caleb Williams loving Kevin O'Connell storyline won't come up before that. But kind of your thoughts kind of going into that one as we kind of get into this schedule. a little bit, starting off again on primetime, big time matchup for this new look Bears attack.
So excited for that game, right? Like you said, a juicy matchup for Bears fans to dream about all summer long. Looking at that week 1 game against Minnesota on the lakefront, under the lights, that game is going to be so exciting. And of course, that's going to be a huge statement game for Ben Johnson, right? I think everybody in the NFL world, in the football world, is going to be excited to see what that offense is going to look like under Ben Johnson, what Caleb Williams is going to look like in year 2. But also, it's a primetime game. So, right, like you're going up against a team that was a playoff team last year. Do we know if J.J. McCarthy is going to be starting for the Vikings in week 1? Maybe, maybe not. But the questions are always going to be there when you have Ben Johnson going against Kevin O'Connell. I think that matchup is going to be so exciting to see how that develops. But you're also Ben Johnson against Brian Flores. It's going to be exciting to see how Ben Johnson, knowing Brian Flores' defense, what he could do against that, and see how the Bears respond in a big test right off the bat. And that also includes the Detroit Lions game. Ben Johnson going home, playing on the turf, playing in a dome. I'm excited to see how the Bears perform in a game like that and maybe how fast this offense could be. So, Scott, what are you looking forward to for these first 2 games for the Bears?
Yeah, the Lions, the Ben Johnson storyline is going to be so dominant in both markets and really across the country. This is one that I would expect a large portion of the NFL audience to be tuning into. Ben Johnson returns to Detroit, something I think is great in our rundown that should just be read according to how our fearless producer Lee Bosch wrote it. What Easter eggs does he have planned? I think that's such a great thing that Ben Johnson's going to go into the lab, come up with something creative, some homages to the Lions, and he's going to really want to win that game. The Lions will definitely want to beat their old offensive coordinator. I think there's going to be so much attention on that. And there's so much intrigue within it, because if you're just looking from a Lions perspective, it's how can Dan Campbell rebound after losing both of his esteemed and highly respected coordinators with Aaron Glenn in New York and Ben Johnson in Chicago. Is there a talent disparity? Maybe, but there's a lot for both sides to figure out as they're learning new schemes, or maybe not new schemes, but definitely new play callers. So I think that's going to be so interesting to see what goes on in Ben Johnson's mind and what kind of comes out during the course of that game. If we see a stumble bum, I would be in for it. I think that would be
we'll
fun.
love it.
And it's just crazy. Now, I don't know, over the course of this schedule kind of storyline thing, I don't know if we're going to hit every game, but we have to at least go in order one more time, because in week 3, Matt Eberflus is coming back to Chicago. So each one of these 3 weeks is like, put it on the Hammerhead, put it on A1, splash it on the Marquee Sports Network, top of the homepage. I mean, it's big time, maybe not stakes, but the intrigue is super high, especially against a team, America's team. I don't know if they're America's team anymore, but a team that's as popular nationally as anyone.
I know they're not going to be Chicago's team that week, and especially with Matt
No.
Eberflus out there calling defense for the Cowboys. I think it's going to be an interesting way for the Bears to start, right? You're looking at 3 tough games right off the bat against teams that could give you a tough time. I would say, in terms of Bears fans' perspective, which game do you want to win the most out of those, right? Like, you have 2 division opponents where you really need to win, but the revenge factor is kind of sweet too. And obviously it's going to be a storyline going into that, but I think the Bears need to start strong. That Dallas game is going to be obviously one that's going to be talked about a ton, but the division games are going to be the important ones. But if you get this 3rd game too, imagine you start 3-0 against those 3 opponents, you feel really good.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with the way that their road slate kind of will develop over the course of the season. You really have to win the home games, and they've been good at winning home games. They need to be better in winning 1-score games. So I think calling a quote unquote must win game. I hate using that term, but it's pretty close to it. You definitely want to kind of have that in there. And then you then you go to Vegas. You got the Pete Carrollness of it all. That could be interesting too, right? But I think the bigger question is less like, can they beat the Raiders, or really Ashton Janty? That's going to be pretty interesting too. Maybe there might be some sort of insider story about how close the Bears really came or how far away they were to ever getting the Boise State running back. But what do you want to know about the Bears coming into the week 5 bye? Super early as you can possibly have one. Not exactly ideal. But what do you need to know, or what do you want to know about the Bears coming off of that 4-game slate and kind of heading into the rest of their gauntlet of a season?
Yeah, that's a great question. And hopefully there are solid answers, right? You're like you said, the bye's so early that maybe you really won't know what the identity of this team is by that, or
Mm-hmm.
you won't know who's going to step up. It's so early. We know things change so quickly in the NFL. I would say the identity of the offense and the identity of the defense, I think, are so important for teams to establish and to know themselves early in the season. The quicker you can find that out about yourselves and the quicker you can lean on the things that you're good about and the things that you're bad you can improve, the quicker you're going to get better at it. So if you have an offensive identity, I don't care what it is, but if you have that a little bit established, that means that you're probably clicking on some level. So give me an identity, but I just don't know if week 5, if you're really going to have a true identity by then. That might be something that really comes by week 12, week 13, when you're getting into the later months, especially if this team starts having success. How about you, though? What are you looking for in those first early games before you hit the bye?
It's like Carmen Vitale isn't here, but I can still hear her voice in my head kind of saying, temper your expectations, Scott. Understand that this is a nonlinear progression, right? And all these kind of things that she always says that I think are so insightful. And it brings it back to your point, right? Which was a really good one. We're not going to know everything about the Bears and have a fully fleshed identity in week 5. I think what week 5 could be good for is some course corrections. Tell me what worked. Tell me what didn't. Dennis Allen, Ben Johnson get back into the lab and get ready for the gauntlet stretch that is coming from week 6, really all the way through week 9, especially. We're talking about games at Washington versus the Saints, at Baltimore, at Cincinnati. Whew, that's a lot of stuff.
Woo! That's a tough one,
so
especially
right.
that I feel like that week 6 game is going to be one of those emotionally charged games as well, too, for the Bears, right? The revenge factor, going back to the site of the Hail Mary, the Fail Mary in Bears fans' eyes, that I think that is going to be such an important game that because you're coming out of the bye, there's going to be so much extra focus on it. So I hate to say it again, like we said, there's no must-win games. There's no do-or-die games that early in the season. But in terms of just psyche of a team, that's one of the most important games of the season in my mind. I really do think so, especially with Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. We know that those comparisons are always going to be there. So I think it's important, that game. If you could win that coming out of a bye, you're going to have some momentum.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a sneaky storyline that doesn't get mentioned too much because it was back from the 2024 head coach hiring cycle, but also Washington's brass was going out to Detroit, reportedly, I should say, to interview Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson prior to when they hired Dan Quinn. They're in the air. Ben Johnson lets them know, again, according to the Detroit Free Press, hey, I don't think I'm in it this cycle. I want to stay with the Lions and kind of get back to it. So is that something else that pops up? I guess Ben Johnson's going to be a headline all year, right? Because he was so attractive to so many teams that there's a lot of different interesting storylines. But I do think it comes down to what you said, though, right? It's not only is this right what went wrong last season, it's also going back to the site of where it happened. This game is at Washington. So I think that there's a lot of demon exercising that needs to happen here. And that, I think, is really an important one here. Now, look, if you're at week 6, Mike, what record, because you kind of talked about best case scenarios, what record after week 6 would you be happy with?
I would be happy with 3-2 for sure. I wouldn't be discouraged if I was 2-3. I think
Right.
that's maybe the best way of looking at it. That I don't think that would be the worst thing. I like I said, I really would like the Bears to win that Washington game. Maybe for my own personal self, right? I don't know if I'm over the Hail Mary. I'm still traumatized by that. I think a lot of Bears fans were too, right? We've been seeing that highlight all summer and since it happened. So I'm over that. Let's get some, revenge. But like I said, if you're 1-4, are you feeling good? Probably
No.
not at all,
No.
right? You're feeling pretty bad. Is it the end of the world? Not necessarily. We've talked about it, and maybe that's that voice from Carmen again. Progress is not always linear. That maybe that could happen, and you should we're not jumping off the bandwagon in that sense, but 1-4, it would be hard to be pretty optimistic, especially if you lose that Washington game. Right after that, just keep looking at the schedule. Like you said, you have New Orleans at home. Then you have 2 tough ones. You go to Baltimore. You go to Cincinnati. Like, if you're 1-4 after week 6 with your bye already, and you're going into that stretch, that's going to be a tough road. So I think 2-3, you don't feel terrible about. 3-2, you feel good. I think you're satisfied with that, with a chance to be better. But you got to avoid a bad start. That's, in my mind, you just can't, crash on the landing pad. That's the big thing this season. And that's a lot to ask for a second-year quarterback and a rookie head coach, right? And it's a lot to ask. And that's just the realist expectations in the NFL, right? It's just going to happen.
Yeah, and they play the Saints in week 7. And I know that's where Dennis Allen was fired in season as head coach. If I know Dennis Allen like I do, and I've covered him twice now, he is going to tamp that storyline down and not say anything about it and really try to kind of make that as normal of a week as possible. He's not going to play into the kind of the media questioning and stuff like that. He's really going to try to make that a non-issue. But you got to know that if the players respect and like him, like it seems like they're starting to, that they're going to want to win that game for Dennis Allen. But you brought up a great two-game stretch here, weeks 8 and 9, at Baltimore, at Cincinnati, at Lamar Jackson, at Joe Burrow, at Derrick Henry, at Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins. Yeah.
Luck. That's going to be a lot of firepower.
Right, especially over the course of 2 weeks. And it's in October, early November, so it's not going to be frigid, but I'm sure it won't be comfortable necessarily. In that stretch, we talk so much about the offense, right, and what Ben Johnson's going to do. That's a big defensive stretch for me. Over those 2 games, how are you ready and comfortable within Dennis Allen's scheme to use the schematics available to you and the techniques to maybe not stop these guys, but slow them down? Because by week 7 and 8, if we're going by Carmen logic, right, that the offense should start to kick up a little bit at that point to where maybe you're starting to score closer to those projection numbers that we were talking about earlier. I think it's a good defensive stretch, though, a good test for them. Look, they're not going to shut those teams out, but can they figure out ways to slow them down enough to score just 1 point more? That those games are going to be important. If you come out of those games 0-2, I don't necessarily blame you, but that's when, if you're not taking care of business up top, that's when things can kind of spiral on you a little bit.
Definitely. Yeah, and that's the point of maybe really it's going to be so crucial for the Bears to start strong if they want to have that success, because the schedule doesn't let up. You're right, though. Defense is supposed to be the thing that travels. We always hear it. Yeah. Defense should travel. Maybe the offense doesn't travel as much, but defense should always be there. And I think you're right. That's going to be a huge test. And I like that the Bears are playing good opponents this year. I really do. I think that, of course, you want them to be a playoff team. Of course, you want them to rack up wins. But I also love seeing high-end football. And if the Bears are going to take that next step, you see playoff teams always having to compete against other playoff teams to take that step. Do you think it's going to get easier for the Ravens in the AFC or Joe Burrow? They're going to have to go against Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes all the time, right? So The earlier you could play that level of competition, in my mind, that's a positive. Does that mean the Bears are going to get wins out of it? Maybe not, maybe. But if you do get wins, you feel even better on the back end of that. And then after Cincinnati, that leads you into a stretch of New York at home, your game at Minnesota, and then Pittsburgh at home. So, of course, we know playing the AFC North is going to be tough. That's going to be probably one of the better divisions in the NFL. But you also have to maybe take care of business against the Giants. And then you also have your other divisional game at Minnesota. That's going to be a tough one, too. How do you feel about that stretch where maybe you're coming off a tough road stretch? Is that a chance to get right against a couple of those teams?
Yeah, when I was going through the schedule when it was first released, that was one of those take care of business moments where you really need to kind of build some momentum, rack up some wins. I think I had been going 7-1 at home, which seems very extreme, but considering the road schedule, you almost have to do it to stay competitive. And at Minnesota, you've already seen them once, and that's when you start to get into that divisional flow. the Vikings have tape on what Ben Johnson's offense is going to look like in 25 and vice versa. JJ McCarthy will be a lot more experienced. So those are opportunities, I think, to try to kind of stack some wins. This Pittsburgh game probably would have been a throwaway, or not a throwaway, but wouldn't have been as intriguing as it is now. And it's something
got juice here.
It does, for two reasons. One, Aaron Rodgers, now a Steeler. Two, he was on the Pat McAfee show earlier on Tuesday, the 24th, and kind of alluded to the fact that this might be his last season. So here's the question, right? So here's the question to you, local Chicagoan, and me really understanding how much this fan base hates the Packers, right? What type of vitriol is there for Aaron Rodgers as the individual, even if he's wearing a different uniform? Is he still a Packer by proxy? Does this game, do the stakes get raised now?
Yeah, of course. Or they should. I hope so. I hope that week going into it, that Ben Johnson has Aaron Rodgers quotes saying that he owns the Bears just displayed all over, right? I know that he's on a different team, and I know that a lot of players on the Bears maybe never faced Aaron Rodgers when he was on the Packers against the Bears. But if you know the Bears' history, if you know the rivalry of Bears-Packers, of course Aaron Rodgers is always going to be a Packer. So, yeah, I hope the Bears get that game. We'll see if Rodgers is healthy by that point, right? Like, that is later in the season. Mm-hmm. We know he is up there in age. We hope he is because, frankly, it is fun to see the rivalry and stuff like that. Storylines like that are good for the game, and it's good for people to get excited about that. But, of course, yeah, I want to see Aaron Rodgers maybe get the Corey Wooten treatment, just like a former Bear escorted Brett Favre onto his way to retirement, right? I'm not saying I want him to get hurt. I just wanted to maybe retire after week 12 or 13, like maybe that could be the case. But yeah, that's obviously going to be one of those games that, if Aaron Rodgers is playing in that, if the Bears are good, like circle that one, that's going to be drama. But the vitriol to Aaron Rodgers is pretty deserved, not only because he was a great player, but, hey, he likes to talk trash, and that's well within his right to do it because he has owned the Bears. But you know what? Sometimes karma comes back around. We'd love to see that happen to Aaron Rodgers as a Steeler if we can. So circle that one. If Aaron Rodgers is healthy, is another one that's going to be good. But, hey, just because Aaron Rodgers is on that too, can't overlook the rest of that Steelers team too. They're going to be a good team. We know Mike Tomlin does work. He doesn't have losing seasons. So that's going to be a tough game regardless of who's the quarterback for Pittsburgh in that game.
Yeah, and then they go to Philadelphia on a short week. They're playing on Black Friday on Amazon Prime. It's not a prime time game. I think it's at 2 p.m. Central, but it's still one of those where the entire football audience is paying attention to one game, which means the Bears are going to be on display at that point. They were a couple times around this period, the Thanksgiving game, despite their long losing streak. I'm sure that Bears and the Bears fans would hope that they're prominent or competitive at this point going into that game against Jalen Hurts and the entire University of Georgia alumni class that dominates their defense. I think that's going to be another interesting one. And it will be interesting to see the state of the Bears at that point. Are they cranking? Are they struggling in one area and not in others? Kind of to see the state of where they are there leading into this last chunk, which could be super meaningful in a division that is really tight, super talented, pretty stacked in a conference that is getting better. Then you look at it and you've got Green Bay twice in 3 weeks, including one that I believe is a Saturday game, a prominent Saturday spot in week 16. So
16,
that's
yep.
Yeah. So that's another not prime time, but everybody's paying attention to you. And we saw the Bears get off the schneid a little bit in week 18, finally beating the Packers in Green Bay. But we're also leading up to something that starting December 7th, people are going to pull up an 11-month-old quote from Ben Johnson from his introductory press conference saying how much he looks forward to beating Matt LaFleur twice a year. Matt LaFleur has tried to distance himself from that, but he doesn't have a great poker face. You can tell maybe he doesn't love it. There isn't a natural friendship there, but that's going to come up again, right? It's only fostering that rivalry that I have really learned doesn't exist in the stands. It exists on the field too.
Yeah, I love that. That hopefully that is a game that is meaningful to both squads, right? Bears Packers is always great, but also when it matters, it's even better. So I hope that Ben Johnson can kind of live up to the trash talk that he had for Matt LaFleur, but also the Bears have really never, in my mind, had offensive minded coaches that can live up to the standard of some of the other coaches within the division, right?
Yeah.
Especially within this era of offensive minded coaches where you have O'Connell with the Vikings, you have a guy that, as much as you might hate him as a Bears fan, Matt LaFleur, you got to give him his
Pretty good.
props. He is a good offensive coordinator slash head coach, right? And all he's done is win while he's been there. So you have to respect that. But I'm excited to see the Bears be able to be at the table with a guy that can hold his weight. So that's going to be important to me for sure. So I want to see them do some work with that. But a tough stretch to end it. Week 14, Green Bay. Week 15, Cleveland. Then your second game against Green Bay at home. You go to San Fran week 17, and then you end it at home against Detroit, right? Like, it's a tough schedule overall. It doesn't get easier. There's really no soft spots as it appears here in June going into the season, but it's going to be a fun season. Like I said, give me tough competition. I just hope the Bears can bring it right from the beginning, start strong, and kind of get that momentum going.
Yeah, and if the games at the end mean something, like what you were saying, if you're playing Green Bay with some stakes, that really amps things up. And I think that that's something that this fan base has just been dying for several years now. And to have that opportunity to play meaningful games in December, as opposed to playing out the string, or you and I are sitting around on, December 16th and we're talking NFL draft. Bears fans don't want that. Frankly, we don't want that either. The more the Bears are in the mix, the more fun this show is going to be. And I think that having that opportunity late in the season is a possibility. But again, this is a gauntlet of a schedule, and there's a lot that we still don't know about this team that we're going to learn. Now, Mike Norman, I'm going to learn a little bit about you right now during a game called This or That. Basically, what we're going to do
Love it.
is we're going to present you with two options. You get to choose one, this or that, and then we will keep doing this or that until we get through the entire thing. It's kind of a pros and cons. Which one would you rather have? Are you ready to play?
I like it. This is a little Price is Right-esque,
It
and I
is.
love the Price is Right. So let's go. Bring it on. I'm ready.
Seriously, I've been watching Price is Right since I was a kid.
Oh,
It's
the
still
best.
on, still charging. And I think that you hope that Caleb Williams is charging well enough. Mike Norman, this or that. Caleb Williams has a 4,000-yard passing season. 400 wouldn't be very much. Caleb Williams has a 4,000-yard passing season, or the Bears have a top 3 defense. This or that.
That's a good one. I'm going to take Bears top 3 defense. I know it's never been done for the Bears to have a 4,000-yard passer, but 3,950 plus a top 3 defense? Give me that all day. Top 3 defense, I'm taking that.
Spoken like a true Chicagoan, that's for sure.
I'm
Okay,
wearing my
3.
Urlacher jersey right now. I can't. I have to take the
Right.
defense.
If Brian would see this, he'd be shame on Mike. Okay, so top 3 defense or top 3 special teams across the boards. Punting, TD returns with Devin Duvernay, Cairo Santos. Everything goes right in the kicking game, or are you sticking with your defense there?
It's very important. You got to have a good special teams. Lovie Smith taught us all in Chicago that is a third phase of the game. But we're going top 3 defense. We're taking this.
All right. Let's keep rocking here. Top 3 defense or Colston Loveland is your rookie of the year. If that happens in this rookie class, he's going to be producing at a high clip.
Ooh, if Colston Loveland is the rookie of the year, Ben Johnson is going to be the coach of the year. I think you could book that, right? That would be very impressive. But the top 3 defense is also going to get Ben Johnson a lot of recognition too, right? So I'm going to take top 3 defense again. It's going to go on a little bit of a run here.
It is definitely, but you will get tested as we move along here. I promise you that. Would you rather have a top 3 defense or a 1,000-yard rusher, which would presumably be DeAndre Swift? And again, 1,000-yard rusher means a lot of other things are going right.
Sure. I'm going to go with the top 3 defense. Keep it rolling. We're playing defense today here.
Okay. All right. Now, we talked a lot about how big week 6 is going to be for Bears fans. Top 3 defense or a walk-off win Sure. Let's just say a Hack Mary against the Commanders in week 6. Top 3 defense, big win there.
Oh boy, you just hit the soft spot. We might be giving up our top 3 defense. If we could reverse it and Hail Mary the Commanders in Washington, reverse the curse, release it, release all the demons. I'm going being the Commanders on a Hail Mary. Let's go. Maybe we have a top 5 defense at that point. I'm taking beating the Commanders week 6 on a Hail Mary. I'm taking that. That is a great scenario right there.
Yeah, okay. So then I would assume walk-off win against the Commanders or going 500 in the division. Is that an easy pick for you?
I want to go a little bit better in the division personally.
Mm-hmm.
If I was going undefeated, we'd be talking, but we're going to stay with beating the Commanders. I like revenge, Scott. I don't know if you know this about me, but revenge is it's fun, I guess, at least in the football sense.
Yeah, it's sweet and best served cold from what I hear. Okay, now we're really going to test the fandom. Walk-off win against the Commanders or sweeping the Packers. And now sweeping the Packers again is late in the year. It could be meaningful, and that sweep could be huge.
That would be huge. That would be just so important for Bears fans. It's been so long for the Bears to have beaten the Packers twice in one season. That would be nice. But which one is going to guarantee me more success? That's really where I'm going away with this. Is beating the Commanders really going to help me get to the playoffs, or beating the Packers twice going to get me to the playoffs? Beating Packers twice is going to help you there. So I'm taking that. Beat the Packers. Green Bay sucks. Let's go Bears. Come on, bear down.
All right, now this is another test, right? That the tests keep getting harder. Last one, this or that. Bears sweep the Packers or Chicago hosts a Super Bowl.
Ooh. So if we're hosting a Super Bowl, you can hear how excited I am. We're getting a new stadium, right? That's what we're assuming, that the Bears want to host a Super Bowl.
All that's tied into
I think
it.
And we're getting a dome, so we don't have to sit outside in the cold. That's not bad. Are the Bears playing in the Super Bowl? We're gonna throw that out there. I know this is in there. Are the Bears? This is like the super fans. Is the hurricane named Ditka? Is that the name? Are the Bears playing in the Super Bowl? Because if they are, I'm taking that. I'm taking Bears host a Super Bowl and then go LA Rams and win it in their own house. Let's go. I would do that all day.
Well, that concludes our first edition of This or That. Really interesting. You know what? There was a time that I thought top 3 defense was just going to sail, but I do think you're right. If they can get those big wins late, okay, maybe you're a top 10 defense and a top 10 offense, then you feel a little bit different. Interesting as we launch through our first This or That.
Those are always fun, Scott. But now I have to spin it on you because we still have a moment. And this game is always fun. But we're going, instead of this or that, we're going to keep it moving with a little would you rather. And this one is going to be phrased a little bit more of Bears fans. Would Bears fans rather they sweep the Packers or the Lions? You asked me if I want to sweep the Packers. Beat the Packers or beat the defending division champs? Which one should Bears fans want there?
I really think they should want that Lions sweep because, again, that means that they got the coach that they were supposed to get. And he specifically said he wanted to come to Chicago because the division was hard. He wants to beat the best, and the best right now is his former bosses. So I think that part is interesting. I know the Packers-ness. Gosh, I've seen those games, the passion in the stands and on the field. And the disappointment when they lose, the elation when they win. But right now, for this particular season, I think sweeping the Lions would be a huge and massive statement for Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson, I think, would answer beating the Lions twice. I'm going to assume that. Moving on to the next one. Would you rather, if you're a Bears fan, or what should Bears fans want to see? A 1,500-yard receiver or a 1,500-yard rusher? We talked about guys getting 1,000, but if they were to have a receiver get to 1,500 yards or a rusher, what would be better for the Bears?
That's really interesting. I would say the 1,500-yard rusher, but I just don't see that in Ben Johnson's offense. That would mean everything is going right for DeAndre Swift. And maybe that would be more impactful. I'm talking myself into it. I've changed my mind on the fly. If they can get to 1,500 yards from one rusher, knowing they're going to rush other people, I think that's a big statement for Swift and a big statement that the Bears made the right choices in trades and free agency, helping out that offensive line.
A rusher getting there would definitely signify that the rush game's working. A receiver getting there, maybe like we talked about, you spread the yards around. Maybe you don't necessarily need that high level. Okay, this last one's just for you, Scott, because I know this is going to hit home. Would you rather sit in a cold football game, or would you rather sit outside in a really, really hot baseball game? I know you've been spending a lot of the time out in the travel ball circuit in the summertime. Which would you prefer, really cold or really hot?
I'm going really cold because you can keep layering up. After being in Chicago, just scarves, hats, jackets, just keep it going. Hand warmers, and you can survive. Eventually, there's nothing you can do about the heat, right? So that's where I'm going. And if the Bears are playing well in the cold late, I think those are also good things. And that, of course, is going to warm Bears fans' hearts if they're watching a game that matters in December, even if it's frigid. That was a lot of fun. It's weird. We had no real news elements, yet we cruised through the hour. And please comment on YouTube, rate, review, and subscribe. You can play your own this or that and let me and Mike Norman know on social media. Thank you guys so much for joining us for another summer edition of the Chicago Football Show. The band will be all back together next week. Carmen Vitale will be back. So for Mike Norman, I'm Scott Bair. Talk to you soon. See ya.